I'm Chase Hughes, that's Bijan Todd, and on this week's snowed in episode of Off the Bench, we've got analysis of the Wizards getting three players into the Rising Stars game, an extensive midseason report on the 2026 NBA draft class, plus our starting lineups for the best international players in Wizards Bullets franchise history. For the midseason NBA draft report, we'll share a consensus mock draft of the top 10 prospects as forecasted by the top mock drafts out there, plus some takeaways from a half season's worth of analytics on the top prospects. Who's shooting the best from NBA three-point range? Who is thriving around the rim? Who is struggling? We'll get into all of that. But first, Bijan, the Wizards tied a franchise record with three players being selected for the Rising Stars game next month. Alex Sarr and Kyshawn George for the sophomore side of things, and then Tre Johnson among the rookies. So, what's your reaction to this?
I think it's deserved recognition for three players who deserve to get in, Chase, because last year, if you'll remember, Kyshawn didn't make it. Last year, the Wizards also had three players, and this year they have three players again, which, by the way, is very impressive that they had three players 2 years in a row, and two of the players last year are not in it this year, and they were able to replace those two with two new guys. That's pretty crazy. But last year, Kyshawn George didn't make the Rising Stars team, and I think every Wizards fan out there thought that was kind of not cool. And he made it this year because how can you leave him out? He's having one of the best seasons of all sophomores in the class, along with Stephon Castle and along with Alex Sarr. So I thought that was pretty cool. Also, I'm glad that Tre Johnson made it because I saw some ridiculous rookie ranking like a week ago that didn't have Tre Johnson in the top 10, and I was like, that's
Was that the
insane.
rookie ladder, NBA.com?
It might have been the rookie, not to poo-poo anyone at the NBA, but like that was a crazy ranking to not have Tre Johnson in the top 10. But him being finally recognized as being one of the best rookies in the class, at least offensively, was very well deserved.
Yeah, agreed there. I mean, I thought Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George were locks, right? I mean, both of those guys have been so good. I think if you look at redrafts of the 2024 NBA draft, both of those guys might be top five. Certainly Alex Sarr is.
Mhm.
And for Keyshawn, I'm just happy for him because, he was the one guy who was left out last year. And he didn't like show any signs of being bitter about it. Like, I remember there was a video the Wizards put out of the guys who made the Rising Stars game being honored in a ceremony before one of the Wizards games, and he was standing up and he was clapping for them. So I think he was genuinely happy for his guys. But I also wonder if it sort of motivated him to not make it. So we're definitely gonna have to ask him about that. But I felt like he was a lock because he was so good this year.
Yeah.
Tre Johnson and Bub Carrington less so. I mean, Bub
Mhm.
started the season out slow, and then Tre is just part of like a ridiculously stacked rookie class. Like you
Mhm.
mentioned, the rookie ladder, it's just a really, really good class. So if he didn't fit into the top 10, like it would say more about the class than it would say about him.
Yeah.
As far as Bub goes, a little bit disappointing, but he did make it last year. And this guy has not missed a game since he entered the league, a season and a half. So I feel like if anyone deserves a couple days off, it's Bub Carrington.
Yeah, he definitely does. And honestly, if I could choose between Bub having maybe similar stats that he had last year and making the Rising Stars again, or getting his three-point shooting to like 44% and not making the Rising Stars, I would definitely take that second option because his three-point game has elevated the entire rest of his game. He's maintained his three-point shot. The one thing that you can knock on his game is his lack of ability to get to the rim. But he doesn't really need to get to the rim on this team because, like we said, Trae Young's now on the team. He's going to get paint touches for the team. You got Alex Sarr down low. You don't need Bub Carrington necessarily to get to the rim all the time. But overall, his improvement as a player going into his second year after starting off slow, like you mentioned, has been super encouraging. So I thought that was pretty good to see. And I'm sure he doesn't care about not making the Rising Stars team. Like you said, he could use a couple days off. So that's really cool. And the fact that he's improved his three-point shooting so much has been awesome. And on the point on Keyshawn, he like like I said, I thought he should have made it last year, but this year, if he's top three in his class in scoring and top six, I want to get this right, or top seven, I believe, in three-point percentage, assists and rebounds, and maybe steals as well, you have to have him in there. And his overall game, like working the pick and roll in DC, getting the most drives to the basket on the entire team, very well deserved. And Sarr, obviously, like you said, that was a no-brainer. Like he had to make it because he's completely revamped his game. He's playing more aggressively on both ends of the floor. So a really encouraging sign. And the one guy we haven't really mentioned was Bilal Coulibaly, who also was having a pretty good year. He's been hampered by injuries a little bit. He made the Rising Stars last year, wasn't able to make it this year. So that's what
Well,
is that?
he's a third year guy.
Third year guy, that's right. But Matas Buzelis made the Rising Stars for the third year this year, which I didn't even know that was allowed. That's kind of crazy.
That's because
But
he was on G League Ignite
that's
before he
right.
got to the NBA. Yeah.
That's right. So, okay, so he used the loophole in the rules there. So that's cool. Shout out to
Yeah.
Matas. But Bilal Coulibaly's having a good year. The only thing is he's been injured a lot, so that's been unfortunate. So let's count them out. We got Kyshawn, we got Trey and Alex for this year. We got Bub and Bilal for last year. So that's five guys in 2 years who have made the Rising Stars team for the Wizards. That's incredible asset management.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. And we'll see next year. Maybe Will Riley or Jamir
Mhm.
Watkins has something to say about it. Reminder that both Bijan and I will be on the ground in Los Angeles at the Intuit Dome for All Star Weekend. So expect a lot of coverage from there. We're taking off the bench on the road. So make sure you follow our coverage and are subscribed to everything. Um, by the way, Keyshawn George making the Rising Stars game made me think a little bit. So he was drafted 24th overall in 2024. Is he already one of the best draft picks the Wizards franchise has made this century, considering where he was taken?
One of absolutely, and I think the best probably. When you sent me that question, Chase, you were like, "Is he the best?" Like with regards to where he was drafted. I looked it up. The one that comes to mind might be Tomas Satoransky, who was drafted 32nd overall and who carved out a really good career in DC, and I really loved watching him play. But Keyshawn going 24th and being this good in his second year and hasn't even scratched the surface of what he can accomplish in this league. I think yes, I think that's an unreal talent evaluation by the Wizards to be able to get him and to bring him here and also enable his career to take the next step in his sophomore year. So I think so. Yeah, I think it's an easy call.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to me because Keyshawn George has been really good. He's already far exceeded the value of the 24th overall
Hmm.
pick, I would say. And it just has not been a strength of this franchise for a very long time to find the quote unquote diamonds in the rough.
Hmm.
So you mentioned Satoransky, second round pick. That's definitely one of the best ones this century. JaVale McGee, 18th
Yeah.
overall in 2008. I think that qualifies. He did win 3 NBA titles and an Olympic gold medal. He played 16 years in the NBA. Steve Blake was a second round
Yep.
pick. He played 13 years. That's not bad at all.
Had
By the
him in my
way,
DMV starting five last week.
yeah, and by the way, he never won a title with the
Hmm.
Lakers. He was like famously one of Kobe's favorite teammates, but unfortunately was not there when they won a championship.
Hmm.
I did not know that. I thought he got a ring both in college and in the NBA. And one other diamond in the rough I'd throw out there, I think this qualifies, is Kelly Oubre. He was 15th overall, so
Hmm.
not in the lottery. And he's now in his 11th season and still good. So I think he's exceeded that draft spot. But again, generally not a strength of this franchise to find diamonds in the rough.
Wait,
They
where was Andre Blatch drafted? Because I looked it up and
He
Blatch
was a
was
second
drafted
round
pretty low.
pick.
Yeah, and he was pretty good. I liked watching him play in DC. That was one play. That was like that era of Wizardsdom where I like locked in, as the kids say, into being a fan. I was a fan since I was born, but like when Blatch and McGee and Nick Young and all those guys were on the team, that was when my fandom took the next step. So shout out Andre Blatch too.
All right. Another thing that piqued my interest with this Rising Star news is Tre Johnson. So Tre is off to a faster start on offense than all of the Wizards' previous rookies under the Winger Dawkins front office,
Mhm.
right? I think that's pretty fair to say.
Called it.
So yeah, you did call it. But when is the last time we saw a Wizards rookie this NBA ready on the offensive end?
I looked that up as well, Chase, and I came down to two guys, John Wall and Bradley Beal. That was the last time rookies for this
I've got
franchise.
one guy who came in between them that I think is worth noting.
Now
Okay.
we're talking about Jan Vesely?
No,
No.
no, we're not talking about Jan Vesley. EuroLeague MVP, by the way.
Yeah.
No, Rui Hachimura did sort of hit the ground running immediately as like
Oh,
a
I thought you meant
14
between
point
Wall and Beal,
scorer.
not between Trey and Wall and Beal. Okay, yeah, no.
No, no,
Rui
no,
was
no.
pretty sweet.
Since Wall and Beal, like Rui Hachimura was very NBA ready on the offensive end. It was just the development
Yeah.
from there that arguably
Hmm.
lacked, right? That's
Yeah.
why, he didn't end up becoming an all-star. But from day one, he was scoring like 14, 15 points per
Hmm.
game on like decent shooting from the field at least. But I think Trey is more NBA ready than Rui was.
Hmm.
I think by the end of the season, we might say he was more NBA ready offensively than Bradley Beal. I'm not
Yeah.
saying like his long term ceiling is definitively higher than Beal's was on offense, but I mean, the shooting numbers tell a pretty good story. We'll see about John Wall. John Wall was probably the most NBA ready rookie I've seen the Wizards draft, maybe in my lifetime. So I don't know. I'm not going to put that on Trey yet,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
Well, you look up the numbers and like Bradley Beal averaged around 13, 14-ish points his rookie year, and Trey Johnson's right there. I think as at the time of recording, he's at like 12.9. Bradley Beal might have had a hair more assists than Trey Johnson does, but they're vastly different players. And John Wall, yeah, I'm not going to put him in the same category as John Wall, but John Wall averaged like 16 and 8 his rookie year. So you're not
It
going to
was
have
pretty
that kind of
good.
numbers on the assists. Yeah, that's that's pretty crazy. But I'm going to say since Bradley Beal, I love Rui, nothing against Rui, and I love the fact that he's carved out a nice career out in LA. But I think Tre Johnson, in terms of getting to the NBA and having no stop, no gap in between the transferable skills that he showed in college, like the outside shooting, getting to his spots in the paint, etc. That is the easiest comparison I can make between Trey and Bradley Beal.
All right. Speaking of the future, why don't we talk about the 2026 NBA draft?
Mhm.
Still 5 months away. Actually, might be exactly 5 months to the day that we're recording this.
Nice, nice.
But I asked you to sort of look around at mock drafts on the internet and come up with a consensus top 10 prospects. So what'd you
Yep.
get?
Let's put the graphic up on the screen right now. This is who the consensus is the top 10. I will say that anything from 5 to 10 is completely unsecure right now. It's uncertain. We have no idea who's going to go 5 to 10. The top 4 are pretty secure just in the names, I think, but we have no idea the order, right? So Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, those are guys are I would say locks to go 1 2. We don't know which one's going to go top. Cam Boozer, who I love, is going 3 in my opinion, and Caleb Wilson from UNC is going 4. And I think any 4 of those guys immediately elevate the ceiling of a franchise because they are all NBA ready right now. They have crazy stats, and we'll get into the stats a little bit here, Chase. But the top 4, I think, is more secure. 5 to 10 is really interesting, though. But overall, I think this draft class could end up being better than the Cooper Flag year last year and the VJ Edgecombe and the Dylan Harper year, just based off of ceiling alone. You know, I'm a big ceiling guy when it comes to the draft. But when we put this graphic up on the screen, I want to know what you think about the top 10 and if you had any takeaways, either analytically or just based off the eye test.
I mean, it looks about right in terms of what I think of the top 10 prospects in this draft. I'm glad you had Peterson and DeBonsa 1 and 2. I'm starting to see some mock drafts that have DeBonsa go 3 or even 4. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Doubt
Like,
it,
stop
doubt
being a
it.
hipster. Like, guys that size with that athleticism, that skill set, and that motor don't go third in the NBA draft. I don't care what year it is. So I'm not saying he's definitely going to go number one. Right now, I think he's going to go number one. Peterson will go two, but
You
it's
and I have talked
extremely
about that a
close.
lot. We depart on who's going to go 1 2 right now, but hey, I love AJ DeBonsa.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely close, but I think those guys have separated themselves as the top two prospects, kind of like Cooper Flag and Dylan Harper did last year. I think by this time last year, it was like, okay, it's probably going to be Cooper number one, Harper number two, and then we'll see about number three. I think the same thing for Darren Peterson and AJ DeBonsa.
And I believe
Um,
Peterson and DeBonsa play against each other within the week or something, or within 2 weeks. I'm
yeah,
going to
on the
be locked in.
31st.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm locked in on the
Yeah,
31st.
that's going to be a big one. I wish I could go.
Yeah, but
But,
then
you know,
you
we're
know
going
what's
to
an
the,
interesting stat about Peterson as well, Chase, that I saw?
yeah.
Totals this year in the games that he's played. I think it's been 10 games because he's been injured a lot. 272 minutes played, 216 points. That is unreal efficiency and volume and scoring touch for a player who's a freshman. That's, I think, per 40 minutes, that's 32 points per 40 minutes. So this dude is
Wow.
going to put the ball in the hoop at the next level for sure.
He's definitely one of the most talented offensive players I've seen come into the league, at least as a scorer. Definitely as a shooter. He's definitely one of the best shooters I've seen at this point in his college career. I mean, it's remarkable what he can do both off the catch and off the dribble. And that leads me to our next segment, which is some early analytics takeaways from the top prospects in this draft. I kind of focused on mainly the guys who are in the top 10 or around the top 10. We could do this for hours, right? But what piqued my interest here is I got an email from a guy I know at CBB Analytics. They do a great job of breaking down college basketball player analytics. And he shared a midseason report, which I shared with you, Bijan. And then I went ahead and researched some additional numbers. So why don't I go through the numbers I found? Stop me if you have any thoughts. And then we'll hear what you thought about the midseason report that I sent you. So we'll start at finishing around the basket. A few guys who stand out as good at doing that would be Mikel Brown of Louisville, shooting about 89% around the rim. Small sample size because he's been hurt, but that's a guard who's like 6'4", so he's shooting that high of a percentage around the rim. That's very remarkable. AJ DeBonsa, 78% around the rim, which isn't crazy for a guy who's 6'9", but it's higher than both Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson, so that's interesting.
And the one thing about AG DeBonsa that I just want to jump in with is
Yeah,
you sent me this document about these analytics, and the one thing that jumped out was how much better he is in the second half than the first
yeah,
half. Like I wrote it down. This is crazy. He's shooting 49% from the field and 19% from three in the first half this season. Second half, he's shooting 69% from the field and 53% from three. What is going on? What is happening in Utah?
that's crazy. Yeah, it gets better as the game goes on. And by the way, 49% in the first half, still pretty decent.
Yeah, not bad.
All right, so a guy who struggles at finishing around the rim, this is interesting. Nate Amon, only 58% around the rim. For his size, that's well below average.
Yeah, we
How
watched him
about,
play last year here at Highland, and he was
yeah,
raw, you could tell, but he had the tools. Like he had the athleticism and the size and the length and the quickness. But he needs to put it together. And I think when he does that, then he'll be better at the rim.
yeah, his shooting numbers across the board are kind of underwhelming, but he's got time to improve. I mean,
Yeah.
we're only in January. Who knows what Tennessee's going to do this year, how long they're going to play. All right. How about good at getting to the rim?
Mhm.
LeBaron Fallon of Alabama, 34% of his field goal attempts around the rim. Not a very big guard, so that's interesting. A lot more to say about guys who are not getting to the rim. Darren Peterson's one of them. Only 17% of his field goal attempts. He shoots 68% at the rim. Both just sort of either average or below average. But he's got two really good excuses for this. One of them is that he's been hurt for most of this season, right? He's got a hamstring injury, so that, of course, is going to affect his mobility. And then, secondly, he's an unbelievable three-point shooter, so I don't think he feels the need to go to the rim. But just on the sense of
39% from three, is that right, Chase? 39% for him this
Uh,
year, something
I
like
mean,
that?
I don't know what his overall percentage is. I'm gonna go through some of his 3-point shooting splits.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, he's an incredible 3-point shooter. And when it comes to the hamstring injury, even if he isn't 100%, like if you watch his games, I've watched like the majority of his games this year. He gets past the first line of defense so easily. Like if he
Yeah.
wants to get to the rim and finish around the rim, I'm not worried about that. Like watch him play against Baylor. Baylor is like a famously good perimeter
Yep.
defense. They've been that way for a really long time, and it was like a knife cutting through butter, or like a hot knife cutting through butter, I should say. It was like no one could stop him. Um, Mikel Brown also not getting to the rim at a high rate. Chris Sinak Jr., a big man from Houston, uh, basically doesn't shoot very much around the rim at all. He shoots a lot from three and around in the mid range. And then Neoklis of Dallas of Virginia Tech, low percentage of his shots come around the rim.
And
This will be
with
interesting.
Peterson, one more thing, Chase, about
Yeah.
Peterson. We when we talk about him, you are very doubtful of his size, it seems like, because he's listed at like 6'6", and I don't know if he's at 6'6". But one thing I did see was like his wingspan is does he have a 6'10" wingspan, or did I make that up? Like his wingspan is out of whack for how tall he is.
I mean, we don't have official measurements on any of
Yeah.
these things, but I suspect like a lot of people are comparing him to Kobe. I think Anthony Edwards is a better comparison because I
Mhm.
think both him and Ant Edwards are a couple inches shorter than Kobe was. But and also, Darren Peterson's best trait is 3-point shooting. That's not something you associate with Kobe
Mhm.
Bryant. So I don't think that's a good comparison. It's also lofty. You're
Yeah.
comparing a guy who's like a top 10 player of all time. Like, why don't you set the bar a little bit lower and see if he can exceed it? I think
This is also
he's a more advanced Anthony Edwards. That's pretty high praise on its own because Anthony Edwards was not nearly the shooter that he is now when he was at the University of Georgia.
That's crazy. And you can also, this is also a chance for us to tout up our combine coverage coming in May. Because when we get the measurements on Taryn Peterson, you and I are going to be locked in to see if he's actually 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan, or if it's closer to like 6'4" and 6'9". We're going to be locked in. So keep an eye on Monumental Sports Network in May.
Absolutely. So just a few more numbers here. How about guys who are really good at shooting from NBA range three-pointers? Darren Peterson, of course, tops the list, about 44% on those plays. 80% of his three-point attempts this year have been from NBA three-point range.
Mhm.
So he can shoot it from deep. That's going to translate quickly. That was a number that stood out about Tre Johnson last year, and now you see what he's doing.
Mhm.
Darius Acuff of Arkansas, the latest John Calipari coached guard, 43% on NBA range threes, and they're two-thirds of his attempts. So he can knock it down from deep. And then Chris Sinak, the big man I mentioned from Houston, 38% on NBA threes, 87% of his attempts. So that's a good sign for him if you're looking for a stretch big. Other notable names from NBA three-point range: Cam Boozer, about 36%, not bad.
Mhm.
DeBonsa, 32%, a little low. Mikel Brown and Nate Amon are both sub 30% from NBA three-point range, but that's something that guys can improve. And then one other thing I wanted to share is both Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson are like extremely good at generating steals beyond the 3-point line, especially for big men,
Yep.
which I think is really interesting. They get a ton of steals in general, but they can go out and disrupt on the perimeter. I think that's a really big selling point for them. And
Mhm.
AJ DeBonsa gets a lot of steals, but normally in the 2-point range.
Caleb Wilson,
So,
Chase, we talk about him a lot, you and I. And one thing that always jumps out to me about him, second maybe to AJ DeBonsa, is the fact that Caleb Wilson is a grown man. Like he has the body of an NBA player right now, and I think he's 18. He might be I think he's 18. He might be 19, but I think he's still 18. And he's averaging 20 and 10 in about 31 minutes a game. And I think he's like 6'10, but he is muscular, and you can tell that he can still pack more muscle onto that frame. So Caleb Wilson will come into the league as a guy who can body his way into the paint. And then if he can also generate steals, like you mentioned, that'll be huge for his development. So I'm very interested in seeing how far he can take UNC in March.
The size, the athleticism, and the motor.
Yeah.
He's got like a great motor. And I mean, if you're bigger, more athletic than everyone, and you try harder, that's usually a pretty good combination.
Yeah, and he's playing in the toughest conference too. And I'm not sure if Duke and UNC have played each other yet. I think they have, but I really want to see Boozer and Wilson go up against each other because I believe they're around the same position, right? Like Boozer is a pretty
Yeah,
clear-cut
they'll
four.
match up.
Yeah, Boozer's a pretty clear-cut four. Wilson might be able to play the three a little bit, but I think he's a four as well. And Boozer's a little bit wider than Wilson, it looks like, but Wilson is a lot more quick twitch, I want to say, maybe a little bit more athletic. So
Yeah.
the next time they play each other in that rivalry, I'm going to be tapped in.
Yeah. So do you have any more takeaways from the midseason report?
Yeah, one thing that jumped out at me, I don't know if this was on the midseason report, but one player who had an amazing game like 3 days ago was Kingston Flemings, and he plays for Houston. He's had one of the best seasons so far, and he's kind of been creeping little by little up draft boards, and he's got a 5.5 to 2 assist to turnover ratio. So he takes care of the ball relative to how much he assists. Obviously, you want to get the turnovers down below two, but he can put the ball in the hoop. He's also shooting really close to 50, 40, 90 splits as a freshman. He's shooting 53% from the field, 39% from three, and 81 from the free throw line. So his scoring has been on display thus far. And I think he's kind of at that point where he's close to locking up being the fifth overall pick. He could even supersede Caleb Wilson to be number four if he continues this offensive trend for the rest of the season. But Kingston Flemings is a guy who, if you don't get lottery luck, if you're the Wizards and you pick fifth again or you pick sixth or anything like that, you might be in business to draft him. So I'm really interested to see what happens with him. But overall, this analytics stuff and everything going on with the draft has been super interesting. Obviously, a lot of basketball still to be played. I still think the top four is pretty set, but 5 to 10 could go any which way.
Yeah, on Kingston Flemings, I really like him, and it's interesting because there's a lot of overlap between him and like Mikel Brown, Keaton Wagler, someone who keeps rising the boards. Like if you look at mock drafts, the vast majority of players projected to go in the lottery are like 6'4" to 6'6" combo guards, and so I think it's going to be really tough to decipher between them because they all have their different strengths, and it's kind of tough for me because they're all my type. Like this is exactly the type of player I love. I discovered that through experience. Like I remember when Tyrese Halliburton came out in 2020, he was my favorite prospect in the draft. The next year it was Josh Giddey. The year after that it was Dyson Daniels. Then it was Anthony Black. All like 6'5", 6'6" guards with passing feel and like just like great feel for the game. And after that I was like, I think I have a type in the draft. What's your type?
Man, that's a great question. First of all, with combo guards, I want to note that like normally when a guy is listed as a combo guard in college, teams in the NBA expect that player to be able to play point guard in the NBA,
Yeah.
and it very rarely works to be a true point guard in the NBA after playing combo guard in college. But if you can make that jump, then you can be one of the most lethal players in your class. So that's cool that a lot of players who you mentioned can still bring the ball up and orchestrate an offense because it's really hard to do, but it's rare. And if they can do it, it'll be awesome. But my type, man, I don't know. I love really springy, bouncy wings. You know what I mean? Like I love the Kyshawn Georges. I love the Debansas. I love the Caleb Wilsons of the class. I love dudes who have insane athleticism with an outside touch. If you're athletic and you can shoot, that's and one other thing, Chase. I mentioned this last year when we were going into the draft. I think that space creation, in my book, is the single most important quality that a player can have in college. If you can create space for yourself off the dribble, if you can create space for your teammates off the ball, that is the one thing that can set you aside and make you an NBA ready player immediately when you get drafted. That's something Tre Johnson did at Texas. So space creation, and if you can add in the athleticism and the outside touch, you're golden. That's my type.
So your type, I'm adding it up. So you must have really liked like Ron Holland when he came out.
I was big on Ron Holland. I think I had him. I might have had him like fifth, maybe sixth in that class, and he hasn't lived up to fifth or sixth level expectations yet. He's a good
He
player,
can
and
defend.
he can defend a lot, and he's going to be on a really good team in Detroit for many years to come. But yeah, like Ron Holland and guys like that, and man, I'm trying to think about recent draft picks. Like who did I really like? Like Cedric Coward, like guys like that. I
Yeah.
really like players of that kind of mold. Yeah, for sure.
All right, before we go on to our international lineups, one other stat I wanted to point out, Isaiah Evans of Duke has blocked the most three-pointers of any of the draft prospects. Something to note, he's known for his defense and his shooting, and he's like been by far the best 3-point defender in college basketball, at least among the guys who are projected to go in the draft. So I wanted to note that, but we can move on to the lineups now.
But that's crazy though. It's so hard to like. How often do you see a three-pointer getting blocked in the NBA? Like it happens like maybe once every 2 games. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy that he's
Bilal
carved that out as
Coulibaly
a
is
week.
quite good at that.
Yeah.
Cason Wallace is another guy who's good at it. Yeah, there's some guys who have kind of developed that reputation.
You compare a guy in college to Kyshawn Wallace and Bilal Coulibaly. I like that defensively. All right, before we go though, as you mentioned, Chase, we're going to do a game that was suggested to us by. I want to make sure I get this right. Was it Cam Chester? Something you texted to me. Hang on, I'm pulling it up right.
Camchester United on YouTube.
Manchester United. That better not be a Manchester United fan because you know I'm a Chelsea fan. But shout out to Manchester United for coming up with this idea. It's our all-time starting five in Wizards Bullets franchise history of international players. And the caveat is you can't choose anyone from North America. So no Keyshawn Georges, no Will Rileys, nothing like that. But top five or starting five of all time.
No Andrew Nicholson.
No Andrew Nicholson. He was this close. But who's your starting five, Chase? 1 to 5. Give me your all-time starting five international players.
Yeah, so best international players, non-Canada version. I'll go with Thomas Satoransky as my point guard. It came down to him and Howell Neto, but Sato gives me positional size, more efficient shooting, and more versatility when it comes to passing and rebounding. At the two, I'm going to go Bojan Bogdanovic. I was surprised at how much of a lock he became once I began this exercise. Like, I saw his name, I was like, yeah, I'm going to put him on there. And then it was like, all right, what position am I putting him at? Because he's got to be on here. Honestly, represents one of the bigger and more underrated what ifs of recent Wizards history. What if they just let Otto Porter walk in free agency and re-sign Bojan Bogdanovic instead? He made about 40% of Otto's salary and became a significantly better player in the years ahead. At the three, I'll go with Rui Hachimura. Rui's floor was pretty high. It was like a 13, 14 point scorer, developed as a threat from long range. Never like a spectacular star, but a pretty solid offensive player. At the four, I'll go Kristaps Porzingis. A lot more options at the big man positions for this, but I'll take Porzingis. His ceiling was a 20-point scorer who could literally take over games. And ironically, I chose Porzingis over Alex Sarr because I think the ceiling was a little bit higher from what we saw with Porzingis. But I think that's ironically one of Sarr's best hopeful comps is Kristaps Porzingis. And then at the five, Manute Bol. I'm going with Manute once again. Could have gone with a few different guys here. Of course, Marcin Gortat, George Mirasan, but I'll take Bol. Had arguably the highest peak of any shot blocker, not in franchise history, but NBA history. His career just didn't last very long, but 5 blocks per game at his apex. So I'll go with Manute Bol.
Solid starting five. And yeah, I remember when Sarr came into the league, we were talking about how like if he can run an offense like Kristaps Porzingis, that's really good. If you can run your offense through a 7-footer at the top of the key, that would be sweet. He's kind of building up to that right now, so that's pretty cool. Also, I have a crystal ball because I knew you were going to take Manute Bol, and so I didn't want to overlap because we did overlap a little bit with the last time we played in the
Overlap
game.
is fine.
It's fine, but I wanted to give people more context and more options when they're watching it at home and trying to see. And you mentioned Howell Neto. Howell Neto is my boy, so I'm going to put him at my number one. I'm going to put him at my point guard. Tiny dude, like what was he, like 6'3", right? I want to say
No,
something
I
like
think he
that.
was about 6'1".
6'1" is crazy, but he always seemed to make the right decision. Like I very rarely saw Howell Neto make a mistake. So he's like one of those hold it down, keep the guys afloat point guards. I'm going to have him in there, the Brazilian. My number two, I'm gonna go with Davis Bertans because I really want outside shooting. The Latvian laser they used to call him. So we each have a Latvian on our team with you having Porzingis. He had one of the best 3-point shooting seasons of all time. I think it was 2020. It might have been pre-COVID. I think it was post-COVID or like the bubble season or
It
whatever.
was 2019-20.
So right before, all right, so the season where the bubble ended the season. Yeah, that was one of the best 3-point shooting seasons of all time. Love watching him play. I also have a pair of Davis Bertans socks that I got as a free giveaway in one of those games. So I hold those close to my heart and my feet, especially in the winter. So that's my two. My three, I'm going to go with Darius Songaila, who I loved watching play. He doesn't really jump off of any of the stat sheets, but I really liked watching him play. He's 6'9", so he can be a really sizable three guard. He also played decent defense, and he happened to go to Wake Forest University, which
I
I'm
was waiting for
contractually,
it.
yeah, I'm contractually obligated to mention it at least once a month on this show. So shout out Demon Deacons and shout out Songaila because I love him. My four, I'm going to go with Nene. I was a really big fan of Nene when he was playing in the NBA and when he was on the Wizards because he was like he wasn't the biggest dude. Like what would you say, Chase? He was like 6'8", maybe.
I think he was probably like 6'9", 6'10", but I mean, he was big this way for
Yeah, I was
sure.
gonna say if he was 6'10", that's way taller than I thought. But he was huge and he was muscular. So we're basically going with our fours. Like you have a tall, skinny dude who can shoot over you, and I have like a guy who's built like a brick on the inside. So it's going to be like length versus toughness versus strength. And I love watching Nene play. He was always a good defender and a good rebounder in the paint. I loved watching that.
Nene was listed at 6'11", so
That's way tall. Oh my God, that's way taller than I thought he was. I legitimately thought he was 6'8". That's crazy. All right, so not that big of a height difference between Porzingis and Nene, maybe about 2 inches or 3 inches or so. So that's my four, and then my five because I knew you were going to take Manute Bol. I went with George Mirasan. Ties Manute Bol for the tallest player in NBA history at 7'7". Like he still comes to Wizards games all the time. I've not had the pleasure of meeting him yet, but one of the best blockers in history, along with Manute Bol. So safe to say that neither of our teams are going to score in the paint. But we love these games. We love the international lineup. So solid lineups, I think. I think we did pretty well with that.
yeah, I didn't even really think about just the size that my lineup has. Sato was what, 6'7" as a point guard.
Mhm.
Bogdanovich was about 6'7", 6'8". Rui 6'8". Porzingis 7 foot plus, and then Manute Bol it's 7'6", 7'7". So yeah, lots of size, positional size. I
The
got
Wizards
that for sure
mantra
in
comes back
spades.
again.
Yeah, there you go. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of Off the Bench. A few reminders before we go. Make sure to first subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts, as well as subscribe to the Monumental Plus app and Monumental's YouTube channel if you want to watch more episodes. And on that note, most of what we do is fairly evergreen, so make sure you go back and watch whatever episodes you've missed or listen to whatever episodes you've missed. We've had some great interviews worth revisiting that have great stories from former NBA players, former college stars, college coaches, so make sure you check all that out. But for Bijan Todd, I'm Chase Hughes. Thanks for watching, everyone.